And welcome to the House Higher Education Committee. We're very grateful for your attendance. We're looking forward to hearing some good information today and maybe answering some questions that I know a lot of members have on these issues. So we look forward to that. But welcome back to the members. We're very grateful. Hope you had a good summer and looking forward to the 2006 session. I wanted to introduce someone who is our new secretary, Jim Cole. He's at another meeting right now, but Jim is serving as our new secretary. He's from Forsyth, Georgia. So try to welcome Jim to our committee. Also, we couldn't do what we do without Donna Woodham. Donna's the secretary over in the Capitol, and we're grateful for you, Donna. And Gina Davis is back with us, and she is our committee aide, and we're thankful for you, Gina, and all that you do for our committee. We also want to welcome Philip Henderson. He is our House intern, and he's representing the great institution of Georgia State University. Hey, Georgia State. So, Philip, we're grateful to have you here this year and hope you learn a lot as our intern. And good to see the Georgia State folks here today, too. And finally, Jeff Lanier, who is our legislative counsel. Jeff always works with us in making sure things run smoothly. The first item on the agenda is to adopt some new rules, and they're housekeeping rules. Because of our new webcast system, there's just certain things that we need to follow. If you look in your folders, Rule 11, the audience can't walk beyond the podium once we start because we don't want people walking behind the stage here or the podium area. And then number 12, members in the audience, don't use cell phones. So please, if you have a cell phone, members and the audience, please turn it off. We don't want distractions, obviously, when we're in our meetings, so y'all try to keep that at bay. Rule 13, I'm not going to enforce. It's on there, but it's members, you can converse with your seatmate anytime you'd like. So at this time, if we have a motion to adopt the new rules, I'll accept that.
So moved.
Any seconds? Seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the new rules. Okay, let's get started. Today we're having a hearing to discuss credit hour transfers from one institution to another, which has been on the minds of many House members who've brought it to my attention. We're also going to discuss GPA weights of honors course credits, and finally, in-state tuition to illegal aliens. These are some of the issues that members have brought to my attention, and so I hope that we can hear from some individuals today representing the university system. First, I want to introduce you before you come up. We have Dr. Dan Papp from the university system and Dr. Frida Hill from the Georgia Department of Technical and Adult Education. They're going to come up and talk to us. When they finish, then the members will have a question and answer period for the members. And also, members of the audience, you're welcome to ask questions too. So once we finish that segment, questions will take place. Next, we'll have Mary Alexander. She represents the Georgia Student Finance Commission. And she's going to really specifically discuss the GPA weights of honors courses. And Mary will let you come up and talk. And then again, we'll have a break for question and answers. And then finally, Dr. Henry Hector, he's the president of the Independent College Foundation. He has some insight on some of these issues too, and so he wanted to share some information. So at this time, it is a great pleasure to have two wonderful representatives, Dr. Dan Papp from the university system and Dr. Frida Hill from the Georgia Department of Technical and Adult Education, to discuss some of these issues I've talked about. So if you would come forward and begin. Thank you.
Chairman Hembert. Let me begin by passing out what hopefully will be our slide presentation.
Okay, great.
Sometimes integration of technologies takes a minute or two. Okay, let me do it without PowerPoint. You'll have the slides in front of you. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the transfer situation between colleges and universities in the state of Georgia and beyond. The way that we have this presentation split up is on the first slide in the overview of the presentation. We'll be looking at 5 different aspects of transfer within the university system, within DTAE, and between the university system and DTAE, and as well with private institutions. We'll begin with a brief overview of the Georgia vision of seamless education that has been adopted by the board of the Department of Technical and Adult Education, the Board of Regents of the university system, and also by the Department of Education as well. We'll then move to SACS requirements. SACS is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and more particularly the Commission on Colleges of SACS. That is the accrediting board, the accrediting agency for southeastern United States. It is one of 6 accrediting agencies in the United States, and every University System of Georgia institution, all 35 of them, must be accredited by SACS. The Commission on the Department of Technical and Adult Education currently has, I believe it's 15 of its 34 institutions accredited by SACS, and the remaining institutions in DTAE are all moving towards SACS accreditation as well. There are some specific criteria for accreditation that the Commission on Colleges has, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about those. We will then look at some specific issues regarding transfer within the University System of Georgia between University System of Georgia institutions. I'll at that time then turn the floor over to Ms. Hill to talk about transfer between DTAE institutions and the university system, and also to discuss transfer between DTAE and USG on the one hand, and other non-Georgia and or private institutions on the other hand. So we're looking at a relatively complex set of issues. Please, as I go through here, if there is anything that I fail to make clear, please stop me at that point in time, and I'll try and go back and clarify what I failed to make clear the first time through. Georgia Vision for Successful Student Progression in Public Education. Let me read it for the folks in the audience who do not have the material in front of them. And again, this is a statement that has recently been adopted by all 3 of the boards of education in the state, to higher education and K-12. The statement is as follows. The vision of seamless education of the 3 educational boards of the state of Georgia is a system of education in which students can effectively move among schools as they advance their education from elementary school through higher education. The system envisioned will ensure that students in each sector are prepared for their future educational and career goals, have an excellent and uniform advising process, and do not have to repeat work that they have mastered. That's our vision. That's the objective that we're moving towards. Let me turn now to the SACS COC, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and the Commission on Colleges requirements. These are all taken from the SACS COC booklet called Principles of Accreditation. The first principle of accreditation that really relates to transfers declares that each institution has must have a defined and published policy for evaluating, awarding, and accepting credit for transfer, experiential learning, advanced placement, and professional certificates. That is the responsibility of each institution that is COC accredited. Further, that responsibility must have transfer being consistent with the mission of the institution and must ensure that the coursework and learning outcomes that are being transferred from one institution into the accepting institution are at the collegiate level and comparable to the institution's own degree programs. So that means there has to be a certain degree of similarity as you make the transfer back and forth. It is then that the institution, and again I'm still coming from the principles of accreditation here, the institution that is doing the accepting of credit assumes responsibility for the academic quality of any coursework or credit recorded on the institution's transcript. Continuing with additional COC requirements, again from the principles of accreditation, there is a certain sense of responsibility that is then given to each institution that accepts transfer credit. The institution must place primary responsibility for the content, quality, and effectiveness of its curriculum with the faculty. The president of the institution, the chief academic officer, the budget officer, any of the vice presidents or associate vice presidents, etc., do not have the ability to say, that transfers. It comes from faculty, if you want to be accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools and the Commission on Colleges. Then we have yet an additional criteria, and that concerns qualifications of faculty. For courses to be transferred for baccalaureate degrees, that is for the bachelor's degrees, the faculty typically must possess a minimum of a master's degree with a minimum of 18 graduate hours in the teaching discipline. That means for folks teaching at bachelor's degree institutions and for folks teaching at non-bachelor's degree institutions that are requesting transfer into a bachelor degree institution, every course has to be taught by someone who's got a master's degree and at least 18 hours. Now, the interesting question becomes one of what happens if these criteria that we've just gone through are not met. Well, putting it very simply, the Commission on Colleges could withdraw accreditation from the institution, and we absolutely do not want that to occur, ever. So all the University System of Georgia institutions and the DTAE institutions that are COC accredited are very, very careful at making sure that these specific criteria, these principles for accreditation, not only vis-a-vis transfer that we've just gone through, but also through all of the other items not related to transfer, that we in fact meet COC requirements. There are issues with accreditation and with transfer. Now let me point to a couple. The increased mobility of students within Georgia, not only within the university system, but between DTAE and the university system, between private for-profit institutions in Georgia and beyond Georgia, means that we spend more and more time looking at transfer issues and indeed getting down into individual transcripts, trying to figure out if in fact courses could or should transfer. Distance learning winds up creating additional issues regarding transfer. You can be anywhere in the world, obviously, with distance learning and take distance learning courses. When something tries to transfer into Georgia, whether it be DTAE or USG, we need to make sure that those distance learning courses that are attempting to be transferred in are in fact being taught by institutions who in fact meet substantive criteria that we've just gone through. New disciplines. With new disciplines coming up, well, computer sciences isn't that new anymore, but something like bioinformatics, for example. How do you wind up having faculty members who have taken 18 graduate hours in bioinformatics when as a discipline, just as an example, bioinformatics is only a couple of years old? We have to work our way through that. Easing transfer, with the desire to ease transfer between and among institutions. How do we move forward with these issues as well? Maintaining a coherent curriculum. During the 60s and 70s in particular, The approach for curriculum was moving more and more towards the smorgasbord. Well, higher education is moving back in the other direction now, more and more towards a coherent curriculum as opposed to a complete smorgasbord. And what does it mean then when we say the typical faculty member will have 18 hours in the discipline plus a master's degree? So there are issues of interpretation that are available as well. Let me move now into the next slide, USG transferred data. The next slide shows where University System of Georgia students transferred from in fiscal year 2004. University System has ballpark 250,000 students in it. Roughly 32,000 of those students in fiscal year 2004 transferred from one institution to another, either within the university system, between DTAE and the university system, or from private institutions in the state or public or private institutions outside the state. Of that roughly, 33,000 students, 48% of them were between university system institutions. So the flow is rather considerable from one of our institutions to another. Another 20% were from Georgia colleges, but not University System of Georgia institutions, including DTAE, and roughly 32% were then from out-of-state colleges. USG to USG transfer issues. Let me divide this into three different parts, and this is really getting to the heart and soul, I think, of what the committee was interested in. Let me begin with the core curriculum and general education. The University System of Georgia has a general education council in place that for roughly the first 60 hours of the undergraduate curriculum, freshman year and most sophomore level courses, this general education council oversees what courses are in that core curriculum. Over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, at the general education level, freshman and sophomore level, within the university system, I'm very pleased to say that our transfer issues at that level have moved down to almost nothing. And we put a couple of mechanisms in place that we'll come back to in a minute to illustrate this. Now, the second level, transfer of courses within the major. Now we wind up moving into some areas where we have some difficulties on occasion. There may be an issue depending on the specific major and on the specific curriculum of that major. For example, if one were to start in engineering at Georgia Tech and transfer to Georgia Southern as an example, with Georgia Southern not having engineering courses, well, the engineering courses that a student may have taken as a sophomore or a junior at Tech, well, it would be difficult to transfer those to Georgia Southern for a specific course. They could transfer in as electives, but not for any of the majors that exist at Georgia Southern. And it works in opposite directions as well. For example, Georgia Southern has degree programs in public health that Georgia Tech would not have. So the transferability in the other direction, courses could transfer as electives, but no degree programs there, couldn't transfer within the major.
Dr. Papp, this is a good point for us to pause. I think there's some questions. Representative Amerson, would you like to ask a question? And press your request to speak button, and I'll turn on your mic.
The first question had to do with the data page.
Yes, sir.
And the 48% within the other USG institutions, that includes all of our two-year schools, does it not?
Yes, sir.
So you would expect those people to move on up to a four-year institution.
Yes, sir.
And the second question is on page 8. And you have not really had a chance to talk about it that much, but the third line down, required courses in major in Institution A may be elected within the same major at Institution B.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not sure I understand what you mean there, but I taught at North Georgia College and State University there, and we had a requirement that you take a major course each. In those days it was quarters, and therefore you had to take at least 2 major subjects in a curriculum from the institution.
Yes, sir.
Now, how has this changed?
Let me give the specific example, if I may, in North Georgia College and State University, I think provides a good example. NGCSU has a major in international affairs. It is a very broad-based major that does not really target something like occurs at Georgia Tech, where an international affairs major targets either international security policy or international political economy. A student going to North Georgia College and State University, for example, might wind up taking many courses within his or her major in international affairs, and if he or she were to make the decision then to transfer to Georgia Tech, perhaps none of those courses were in international security policy or within international political economy. Now, all of the courses would transfer in, but many of those courses would transfer in, I shouldn't say many, some of those courses would transfer in as electives. The student may have to take specific international security policy courses because that's the concentration of the major, or international political economy courses because that's the concentration of the major at Georgia Tech. Is that?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, next, Representative Gardner.
That was actually me. I had my choice of pressing 2 of them.
Okay, Representative Borders.
So I'll take both opportunities. if
Sure.
you don't mind. Yes, sir. If I could refer you back to page 7, the chart that Representative Anderson was speaking about. Don't know that my question is even relative to this, but it's a one of curiosity here. Of the 48 and the 20%, that's 68%, leaving the 32%, the out-of-state colleges. Does it make any difference if those out-of-state colleges, if some are in the SACs and some are not in the SACs? And do we have reciprocity with those in the SACs and out of the SACs? And is this legislation going to address that?
It makes no difference whatsoever from our perspective whether an institution is accredited by SACs or one of the other regional accrediting bodies. We look at the transfer credit if they are accredited institutions, and we'll accept that, of course, contingent on faculty credentialing and other issues.
Any other questions before we proceed? Okay.
Thank you. If I may make one other comment, by the way, vis-a-vis the transfer data, we in the university system keep 2 different sets of numbers when it comes to students. Number 1, institution-specific numbers, and institution-specific numbers are for those students who start at Institution A and continue at Institution A. And then we also have system-wide numbers. That's for those students who begin at Institution A and transfer to and then complete their bachelor's degree at any other institution in the university system. We consider all of them successes, regardless of whether they start at A and stay at A, or start at A and transfer to B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. Going back to the, on page 8, the USG to USG transfer issues, if I may go down to the 3rd chief bullet, the transfer of elective courses, again, the transfer issues of elective courses, as far as we can tell, are almost non-existent, but we do wind up having that issue then of surplus electives, the potential issue of surplus electives, when students transfer from institution to institution and change majors, or they go to an institution and have the same major, but the area of concentration is different. Heck, in all honesty, we even had that surplus elective issue for students when they stay at the same institution and change majors. That doesn't appear to be a transfer issue then, though, but it is something that is real and is there. If I may go to the next slide now, managing USG to USG transfer issues. I've already alluded to the General Education Council, which coordinates the general education freshman and sophomore courses throughout the university system. Absolutely critical body. All requirements for majors are printed in every catalog for each of the institutions. Most of them are online now, by the way. We also put in a number of years ago something that, for want of a better term, we call a transfer ombudsperson. Every one of our 35 institutions has someone designated at that institution whose job is to help kids transfer if they want to transfer, regardless of whether they want to transfer out or regardless of whether they want to transfer in. So this transfer ombudsman program has been something that has been very, very successful in reducing, and admittedly not eliminating, but reducing transfer issues that pop up within the university system. Next slide, transfer between the University System of Georgia and the Department of Technical and Adult Education. The next slide has the numbers that transfer back and forth between the institutions. Roughly 1,000 students transfer from the University System of Georgia to DTAE last year, and roughly 1,000 students transfer in the other direction as well. So with that, then, let me turn the floor over to my colleague from the Department of Technical and Adult Education, Ms. Rita Hill. Rita?
Let me add my thanks for allowing us to present to you today. On the next slide, page 11, if you look at DTAE USG transfer, we wanted to tell you there are what we would call some non-issue areas. For instance, we have developed an agreement with the university system for a mini core for math and English. There are 5 courses in that mini core, so there's never a problem with that transfer. We don't really see any problems with the core courses between the COC accredited DTAE colleges and the USG. And then we also have the Bachelor of Applied Science. We don't see problems there because we have agreements that when our students finish an associate degree, they can transfer into a university system school and get a Bachelor of Applied Science. So we've not seen any issues. On the next slide, we do have some areas where we see some issues. As Dr. Papp explained, our system, DTAE, has 2 separate accrediting agencies that our colleges fall under. About half of us are COC accredited. 3 or 4 have both COC and COE. COE, by the way, is the Commission on Occupational Education. It actually used to be a part of COC and split off. Then we have probably another 15 to 18 colleges that are in some stage or process of getting their COC accreditation. And then we have just a handful that are still waiting to make their application. Mostly that has to do with audits. Not everyone can get an audit exactly when they want it, so that issue. We have a few courses where we said not all courses in the certificate or diploma will transfer into an associate degree. That's at the DTAE colleges and perhaps at USG. But that would be in the technical certificates of credit or the diplomas. When a student starts that track, if they take English or math that's required in that area, those would not be the higher level required in an associate degree, so that would not transfer. But if the student decides they want to go ahead and do an associate degree, then all they would need in our system to do that would be to go ahead and pick up the higher level math and English. We do see some issues with transfer of pre-major elective credits. Faculty credentialing, both within DTAE and between DTAE and USG, is always an issue. That's the big piece, I would say, of COC accreditation, is make sure that your faculty credentials are correct. Many of our colleges that in the DTAE system that are still COE accredited, because they're moving toward COC, probably pretty much all of them will have those faculty credentials in order. And then, as Dr. Papp explained, there's always that issue of having a lot of surplus electives for students that it transfer, but it's transferring as an elective. On the next slide, transfer between our two systems between non-Georgia and or private universities or institutions. We always have to look back at the COC and COE standards. Those always apply, those accreditation criteria. We would have perhaps an issue of knowing whether or not the courses that a student may be wanting to transfer into us, whether it's really at the collegiate level. That would be an issue. Might have to look at missions and majors. For instance, the mission of our department is basically putting students to work, whereas maybe in the two-year USG institutions, those are considered more of transfer colleges. Again, faculty qualifications, a big piece. Unfortunately, we don't have any available data on this. My presentation was short, but now we're open for questions if you would like, either for Dr. Papp or for myself. Questions, anyone?
Representative Borders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a simple question. Either one of you could answer, or maybe both of you. Who would be against this legislation, and why would they be against it?
I don't know that they can answer that because I don't know that we have a piece of legislation.
Yeah,
like this.
seriously.
Well, yeah,
What
I mean,
exactly does the legislation?
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
It's just a hearing.
Okay. Without not saying it, we're not saying it as legislation. Who would be against, and why? These procedures, proposals, planned actions, policies, activities,
I'm not
proposed
sure what the
legislation.
proposals are, but again, the one problem, if you just said emphatically you're going to transfer from this institution to this institution without question, that would be an issue for those colleges and universities that have the COC accreditation, because it would affect their accreditation by bringing in courses that were not taught by faculty that are properly credentialed. Dr. Papp?
If I might impose my thoughts here too, I think you're right, Representative Borders, and this has certainly been helpful to me. From time to time, members ask me to help with students who have trouble transferring.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what you've told us today, those students probably fall into one of these areas where it's not possible. And I certainly know that you have mechanisms in place to make sure that you try to do what you can for those students. But I think it's a situation where maybe constituents call and perhaps one student in their area couldn't make the change. So it seems like you have, from what you've told me today, you have a system in place that seems to work. Obviously, there's some areas you can improve on, but I don't know that we would need to do anything other than what they're already doing. And if a representative asked you as a member of the Higher Education Committee to help out, certainly now I feel a little more comfortable with knowing the system that's in place and can, in a kind way, answer their question and certainly refer them to you. But that's my take on this. Does anybody have any different feelings on that? I think you've done a good job in a consistent way to tell us what's going on in the system. Yes. Representative Ash.
It has to do back on page 3 where the end of the vision says, do not have to repeat work that they have mastered. When students come to the university system or to DTAE and they come with knowledge of a subject, I understand that the AP process is a way in which you validate that they already have it, and so they don't have to do some more. Are there other mechanisms by which a student transferring from a K-12 institution can come into one of these institutions and exempt some level of coursework because they already know the subject?
Yes, they do.
And how do you do that?
Absolutely. Let me use, again, a specific example. The General Assembly many years ago has decided that the university system that every graduate of the university system has to have a course in American government and a course in American history. Well, what would happen would be that student could come in to the Department of Government or the Department of History and say, I want to take the test. Every one of our institutions, in fact, has tests, most of which are guarded very, very carefully, so that that student can then, what we use the term, pro out of the American government or the American history. You can do that in other areas as well. I just use that as an example.
How do students know to ask to take that test?
That is in the course catalog. So they would have to read the course catalog.
And that would be the same thing if they wanted to get out of English 101. Is there a test they could take?
Exactly correct.
Thank you.
Representative Buckner.
Just to help me with a perspective here, in the early 90s, I was getting quite a few calls about students transferring from one institution to another. And basic core classes like English and so forth, those were not transferring. I don't get those calls anymore. Is that because you have instituted the policies that we see here and that's resolved those issues, or is it because those folks have already made it through?
I like to think, ma'am, that it's the first of them. Back in the early 90s, and I've been in the university system of Georgia for 33 years already. Back in the early 90s and before that, we did have a general education council, but it was nowhere near as active and effective as it is now. And particularly when the university system went through its quarter to semester conversion and sat down and re-looked at its entire curriculum, but most especially the Gen Ed curriculum, that transferability quotient was one of the leading lights that the university system put forward. So I like to think it's because of that, and I also know it's because of the inclusion and creation of the transfer ombudsperson system.
Also in the DTAE system, we have instituted several years ago state standards so that if you take a computer course at this college and that same course that over here is going to transfer because of those state standards have been in place.
If I may brag on two other things, may I do that, Chairman? One of them is the mini core that is shared between the university system and DTAE. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we got faculty from USG and DTAE in math and English to sit down and reach agreed upon standards and agreed upon content at the DTAE COC schools and the USG university. That's part one. And bragging part two, if I may go over to the articulation that is in place between the Department of Education and higher education. The Department of Education over the course of the last year and a half or so has put in place something called the Georgia Performance Standards, GPS for short. Superintendent Cox, as K-12 is moving forward with the GPS, asked the university system to comment on them. So what we wound up doing is asking our academic area committees to look at the high school and middle school and elementary school performance standards. We had roughly 1,000 of our approximately 8,000 faculty members comment on and make suggestions on how to improve the articulation between the new Georgia performance standards and the university's definition.
Representative Gardner.
I want to thank you for the work you've done in making this transfer easier and having an ombudsman to help with that. My question is about the third segment of the educational system, the K through 12, and the high school students who might have an opportunity to attend technical colleges while they're still in high school. My concern is really about how we can get more students to graduate from high school and hope that the technical colleges can assist with that. And I noticed the other day the commissioner reported that the number of high school students who were enrolled in technical colleges at the same time that they were in high school is dwindling. And that's of great concern to me. So I wondered if you could comment on that.
We have seen a decrease of about 2,500 from last year to the previous year before. And I think that's probably because of the hope cap. They're afraid they're going to bump up and exceed the number of hours they can have under hope. So it is an issue. We're trying real desperately to educate not only the students but to educate parents that if the student gets on track and stays on track, they're not going to lose their hope and they'll have enough hours. That it's, we've had students who will take something and then they change their mind and then they go start on another track. But if we counsel them ahead of time and do some good advisement and they stay on track, they'll be okay. But it has gone down because of that fear. I might also add, one of the things I'm presenting a little bit later today is about our stay in school grants that we have at 23 of our technical colleges that I hope is really going to help students finish high school.
Last year it went down 25. May I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
It went down 2,500, and
About
the year before the same thing happened. Is that?
No, not from 03 to 04. It was down some, but I don't remember the number exactly. But I know from 04 to 05 is really when we saw the greatest decrease. But then it would be, that was system-wide, college to college. Some of the colleges had pretty significant decreases.
So that you see the stay-in-school program as an avenue for improving that? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it's good to just get students in school, not for the dual enrollment. Although we think that with the advisement we're going to be giving these students, I think that will help even in the dual enrollment. And to me, that's really cost-effective for the students because they can finish quicker and cheaper.
Well, and maybe end up with a skill so that they can go out in the workforce more quickly.
Exactly. I wanted to add one other thing when Dr. Papp was talking about articulation agreements. Not system-wide, but college to college. Many of our colleges have articulation agreements with their local USG college or university. Like I'm at Southwest Georgia Tech in Thomasville, and we have some agreements we're working on with VSU. But on a system-wide, we're working with the university system to have an articulation for our early childhood care and education program. They get 2 years with us, and then they go right in and get the bachelor's degree. So we're really excited about that. We're working on that now.
Mine is a DTA question that has to do with the Ford closing yesterday and the promise that Ford employees who are now going to be without jobs could take 2 certificate programs. Now, if they've already taken one, or if they already have 2 certificates, the hope issue, are they going to get 2 more, or do those 2 count?
They probably will still have enough hours to take additional certificates. It would depend on what their certificate is. And it might be if they already have a technical certificate of credit that we might counsel them to go into a diploma or a degree program. It just depends on the individual.
I've had several calls, and people are very confused about what they're going to be able to do.
Their local college will work with them. In fact, typically what we do when we have business or plant closings, we take a team out to the business, and we just sit down and work with each employee individually on a plan.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Yes, Representative Mumford. Press your button and then number 7 and get you going there.
I wanted to return to a question I think Representative Gardner raised. I wanted to make sure I understood what you said. Did you say that you believed that the CAP and Hope scholarship hours had contributed to a decline in joint enrollment between high school and technical schools?
Dual enrollment.
And that would have happened since the legislature met last year?
Yes.
So that would have essentially been in the summer and fall quarters?
It would have been starting. I'm sure y'all have, the USG's probably experienced the same thing. It would have been 05, which would have been July of 04 through summer, or it's June of 05. That would be our 05 year.
And if I understood correctly what you were saying, that the problem is that high school students were afraid to take a technical school course or a college level course for fear that they would use up a Hope hour.
Parents also are concerned with that. Students, parents, and counselors.
Thank you.
Representative Gardner.
Can you tell me, maybe you can tell me just based on your institution, but how many students actually use up their 95 hours? Is that the limitation? Am I correct about that?
Yes, and I don't have the number, but I know last fall is when we first started hearing students say, or we found out they didn't qualify for Hope. They'd used their Hope hours.
They had used up the 95 hours. Mm-hmm. So these people who are unemployed and seeking additional training, if they've already had some certificate training or used their Hope grant to get training, will reach the cap fairly quickly then too, you think?
Faster. I mean, a technical certificate could be anywhere from 15 to 25 credit hours. And so you can see they would have.
So how would you advise us if our goal was to try to get more high school students to stay in high school, and we think that one of the ways of doing that is to provide technical education for them earlier? How would you advise us to address the cap that seems to be creating the problem?
I would think that if you do not count the dual enrollment hours against their Hope limit, it would be beneficial. Do you agree, Dr. Pat? Because that takes away the fear of getting to that cap too soon and not being able to finish a diploma or a degree. So I think if you didn't count that, and I don't know the dollars you're talking about. What is it worth economically to have these people go out and be in the workforce and contribute to the economy? How much is that worth?
Yeah,
be a graduate
from high school
and get a good job. So I think not counting the hours in dual enrollment against their Hope or joint enrollment.
As you know, I have a bill in this committee which tries to address that, but only if they actually graduate from high school. So I would look for your support on that legislation, members of the committee.
Representative Kidd.
What's been said before has reminded me of a problem, and I'm going to take advantage of having you in front of us today, and I appreciate all that y'all have presented. But there seems to be some joint enrollment problems with students who have a B average and qualify for the Hope, but take a developmental study, I don't think it's called that, a developmental studies course at the DTAE institution, and that does not qualify under Hope, and therefore they were not able to complete the their DTAE requirements.
I think what happened was in our system we were giving grades of S or U,
That's what it was.
And so it didn't really carry those points with it. We actually just recently changed that, so they will get an ABCD.
And that'll make the difference. It was
will
the
make a
SME.
difference. Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
good. Is that retroactive? Well,
I don't think so.
Representative Amerson.
I think you can clarify this one, but as I have looked at some of the curriculums, as you said, 25, 30 hours maybe to get a certificate, and didn't we limit the number of certificates to 2 under the Hope Scholarship? So it seems to me that 95 hours was a plenty.
I think you're correct about that.
So
Representative Ash.
So my Ford employees who already have 2 certificates,
That would be
although they
additional.
might have more hours left, they'd still be out of the program because they have 2
But
certificates.
remember, what I said was that we might counsel them to go into a diploma or degree. And I'm not real sure whether they could get Hope if they've already. I'm not sure. I just have to research that.
If you would, please, I think that's a real crisis for these 2,100 folks.
Just to throw out another issue, and I hope the members have had their time to talk. What is the university system and the technical college position on tuition, in-state tuition for illegal aliens?
My cop-out question is that's above my pay grade, but I'll give the floor over to Senior Vice Chancellor Tom Daniels.
Dr. Papp and I are certainly colleagues, but on that question, Mr. Chairman, right now the university system is interested when students come to us, are they considered a resident of Georgia or a non-resident of Georgia? If you're a resident of Georgia, you pay the in-state tuition. If you're a non-resident, you pay the out-of-state fee. I mean, at the present time, we do not ask our applicants, are you here legally? I mean, that's just a straight answer to your question. I mean, there's no place on our applications that says, you know, are you here legally or not? We're trying to, the charge that we've been given is to bring about a more educated Georgia. It seems to us that when students come to us, if they're academically prepared and ready to do the job, we admit them. If they're an in-state resident, they pay the in-state rate. If they're a resident of another state or another country, they pay the out-of-state rate.
But the question is not asked as far as the, or determined the location of their home, their residence.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Any questions from the audience regarding these issues or have concerns? We'll be glad to hear from anybody in the audience. Okay. Thank you very much. Any final comments?
If I may just redress an error that I made earlier, I need also to introduce our Associate Vice Chancellor for Strategic and Research and Analysis, Dr. Kathy Hudson. Kathy just does a wonderful job for the university system and for the state legislature. Chances are, if any of you have a question that is at all data-driven, it's going to wind up on Kathy's desk. So I need to recognize Kathy and thank her for all of her wonderful work.
Kathy Hudson, thank you. And Dr. Papp, Dr. Hill, would you like to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you again for giving this opportunity to us.
And I think the members have an open door to contact you if issues develop or questions arise. But we certainly appreciate your attendance today and thank you for your presentation. To continue on, to make sure we stay within a reasonable time frame, I'd like to ask Mary Alexander from the Georgia Student Finance Commission if she would come to our podium. She's going to discuss the GPA weights of honors course credits. This has been an issue that's been brought to my attention by a lot of constituents, and I don't know the right way to address it, but certainly I hope that Mary can give us some information that will be helpful. Mary, thank you for coming.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having having me. Again, I'm Mary Alexander with Student Finance. I'd also like to point out I've brought our legal counsel with us. Her name is Robin Crittenden, in case you have any questions for her as well. I just wanted to provide a brief explanation of the statute regarding the weighting of courses for HOPE eligibility, and then if you have any questions, specific questions, then you can ask them. As you know, in 2004, the Joint Commission on HOPE, which was both House and Senate members, as well as the governor's office and some private citizens as well, produced a recommendation for HOPE to help continue HOPE into the future. We made some changes, and some of those changes will come into effect with the class of 2007. One of those changes is to provide for Georgia Student Finance Commission to calculate the overall GPA of every student who is applying for the HOPE Scholarship. As you'll recall, this is not for HOPE Grant, just HOPE Scholarship. So the way it works is we have this process that we've been working with the schools to implement, and one of the parts of the process is that we are recalculating GPA. So we take the GPA that they give us and then we recalculate it. And so when schools calculate their GPA, they could have, let's say, an honors English course. They provide a weight of maybe 1 point, so that student may get a 5.0 instead of a 4.0 in English. Well, all of that is fine at the school level. The schools can use that to determine valedictorian status or any other awards that they would like to provide for the students. But as for HOPE eligibility in the statute, which if you would like to write down, it's 20-2-157, it only provides for the weighting of advanced placement and international baccalaureate classes. And the reason that is because both of those types of courses are monitored by an international, or not even for AP, but a set of individuals who are outside the state of Georgia, who have a set curriculum, who have one particular course description. There's also a test at the end of it. And because it's regulated by all of the courses in the state of Georgia for IP and AB, AP and IB are regulated by one entity, those courses would be included for a weight. The Student Finance Commission will weight those courses a 0.5. So if you get a B, instead of a 3.0 in that course, you get a 3.5. And I believe that's all I had to say on the actual weighting of the courses. I have information on AP and IB courses and what they are. And really, other than that, if you have any questions, I can take them.
Representative Ash.
The question is about availability of AP and IB programs across the state.
Okay.
Are there parts of the state where these programs are more readily found? And
well, we've actually been trying to get some information on where AP courses are. IB courses do tend to be focused more in metro areas, but AP courses are relatively inexpensive to administer. Really, all you have to do is get the course material from the College Board, the AP, the Advanced Placement Board, and then you have a teacher who can teach the course. Now, it's recommended that this teacher attend some training with the College Board, but it's definitely not required. And I do know that the AP courses are available in some rural areas. For instance, I know Floyd County offers many of the 35 AP subject area courses. But I can get more information on how that's spread throughout the state for you.
Are the online AP courses still available online?
I'm actually not sure about that, but I can find out.
Virtual online. Yeah, virtual classroom. I believe we had that issue last year.
I think so. According to Andrew Dollar.
Representative Borders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a daughter who's a sophomore in high school and a daughter who's a freshman in high school. And they both take, to tell you the truth, I don't know, they're either honors or advanced placement. And they're about to ask me about this. What is the difference between advanced placement and honors? I know they study real hard, both of them. They always get A's and everything that they do. But what is the difference between the two courses? They both seem equally hard to me when they tell me one's AP and this is honors class. They're doing this and that, but they both seem like they work a lot on both courses.
Well, they may be at the school your daughter attends. With honors courses in the state of Georgia, there is no statewide standard for the curriculum in an honors course. So in order for us to be able to say HOPE eligibility is fair across the state, because the honors classes do not have a statewide standard, the commission felt it was then unfair to weight them because some students would be given an advantage. AP courses have a set curriculum that's the same in every high school, whether you're in Savannah, Atlanta, Tifton, they're all the same course.
Well, in my particular case, Lowndes and the Valdosta High School systems, could the school administrators do something that would change the honor courses to AP courses if they both have equal amount of work? Is that a lot of difficulty doing that? And
No, sir. They would just contact the College Board and get some materials on transferring that course to AP. They could opt to send a teacher to training, but they don't have to. But if they call that College Board, the College Board will work with them to transfer that course.
that seems like that'd be the simple thing to do. Would it not be if both of courses are equal work required and intellectual activity to accomplish an A? Wouldn't it be better to have the one that was going to be counted towards your Hope Scholarship as opposed to the other?
Right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, it's really up to each local school board how they want to address the statute. But as far as student finance is concerned, we have to follow the statute, which came about because of a lack of a set of standards for honors courses.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Amerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a theoretical question based on what I thought I heard you say. I don't think this would ever happen, but if a person was taking 3 courses and he got a C in one and 2 AP courses with a B in those 2, you would get a 2 for the C, and you would get a 3.5 for each of the Bs, and so therefore you have a B average as far as Hope is concerned. Is that correct?
If the math is correct, yes, that sounds right. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The issue really needs to be brought to light. It seems simple. Representative Borders asked the question about how a high school could get the programs involved in the AP process, and your answer was simple. Do the administrators in our school systems, K through 12 around the state, know that?
I'm not sure because we merely administer Hope, because we do that section of it, the funding. I'm not entirely sure what administrators in some school districts know and what some don't. We could ask Department of Education maybe to give their opinion on that. But as far as we know, I just know based on my own research how a school could become a part of AP. I also know that Department of Education may be looking at standardizing honors courses sometime in the future, which would change the dynamic of this conversation. But as for if administrators are aware, it's possible that some aren't.
Because it seems like it would be a better solution, I guess a more quickly placed solution, as opposed to waiting for the State Board of Education to work with all the school systems in the state to make a uniform honors program. It just seems like that would be better. If you could tell us or can find out the information about that process to become an AP class, I think I would appreciate the information, and if you could get that, we would be grateful.
All right.
Representative Kidd.
You may or may not know this because you're not charged with knowing it, but you may know it. Is there a cost associated with AP courses? Do the schools have to pay for all this information from the College Board? And is the College Board a for-profit institution?
I think it technically is. I'm not entirely sure. But they make their money off the exam. And again, this is just the research that I have done. I have not had the opportunity to talk to school boards about this, but they make their money off the test.
So there's a possibility that maybe cost has been a problem with signing those up.
It could be, but the test is paid for by the student. It's $82. $8 of that stays with the school to cover administrative fees. Now, the student doesn't have to take the exam. We're interested in the course material.
But you can't get credit for it unless you take the exam, correct?
It depends on the school. You don't have to take the exam to get credit. I know for a fact, for instance, in Floyd County Public Schools, you can take an AP course, not take the AP test, and you can get credit. It's the standardization of the course material that's an issue.
But would a college admissions accept a credit?
No.
As an AP credit?
No, you're right.
Okay.
If they wanted that to apply, which is a different issue, but if they wanted that to apply for college credit, they would have to pay the $82 to take the test.
Representative Ash.
But if in your weighting process you give it that extra .5 if they've taken the test or not?
Yes, sir. It's ma'am, I'm so sorry. I was looking at
That's right.
Representative
Most
Henry
of
when
them
I
used
said
to
that.
be, yeah.
But it's really the course material that is the concern, the lack of standardization of the honors course material. But AP and IB course materials are standard for every high school in Georgia. So it's the course material that the Joint Commission was looking at, the standardization of that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Does that make sense?
Representative Chokas.
Could I get a clarification? Now, the honors program and the honors courses or the AP courses, are they starting in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th grade, or are they reserved for the junior and senior years?
They're traditionally junior and senior years. I have not heard of students taking them earlier, but I do not think there's a regulation on that. Traditionally junior and senior year. And there's 35 subject areas that are available, and so they're quite, you can take one in Chinese, for instance.
Could I get a follow-up?
Sure.
And a follow-up on that, would the institution, the high school, perhaps offer both honors and AP at the same time?
Many do, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mary Alexander in this area? Any questions from members of our audience regarding the discussion on GPA weights and honors courses? Again, thank you, Mary. Thank you for coming in and sharing this information. I know the committee members, and I guess, too, you have an open door. If there's questions about these issues with Georgia Student Finance, I know you're a new face to Georgia Student Finance, and we're happy to have you and look forward to working with you guys.
I appreciate your patience due to me being somewhat new. But please let me know if you have any questions. I can give you my card after the meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Dr. Hector, we'll move on. Dr. Henry Hector, president of the Independent College Foundation, is our last presenter, and we'd like to welcome you, Dr. Hector.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add to this discussion. I would like to second, though, the public university presentation. We are all SACS-accredited institutions, and we basically follow the same process that the public universities use in measuring and evaluating transfer of credit. I would say one thing, though. We compete very hard for students, so I think most of our colleges are not going to put up any kind of artificial roadblocks to prevent transfer of credit. But I think the big problem is, and will continue to be, students who change from one major to another. When I was working in Alabama, I used to get hundreds of calls from parents and track them all down, and almost invariably, it got to the concentration. It got to the point where you simply could not substitute one course from one institution outside of a major to another concentration within that major. You can't ask academic people to water down the degree. And in a global economy, and that's what we keep talking about, higher and higher standards for our students, we don't want to move in that direction. And the other thing I would like to add, the Southern Regional Education Board has an electronic campus with hundreds of degree programs available from all over the Southeast, both public and private colleges. It's all SACS accredited. And if you go to the website, which is just www.sreb, many of our public colleges and many of our private colleges have courses in that. But you can take a full degree program now from another state, often at in-state rates. So we're part of that, and it's essentially protected by SACS accrediting process. And those standards, while I don't know that they're great standards, they are good standards. And I think that we don't want to move away from that or water standards down, especially when we're more worried about competing and getting our students up at a higher level. So I would also like to mention, just under this AP Honors, we have an Excel program, dual enrollment. And I was part of the Joint Committee on HOPE. And one of the nice features about the Excel program is the student can take the college course at high school, get a C. It will still count towards graduation, but won't hurt their GPA in terms of the Hope Scholarship Program. At least that was my understanding. And the reason for that is many of our rural schools simply can't afford AP or those types of programs. Even advanced, even honors programs are often outside the ability of many of our rural schools to afford that. So that was the purpose of putting in the Excel program, and I think it's working fairly well. Many of our colleges are working with local school systems to do that. It is a viable alternative, and I'd just like you to keep that in mind. I think the nice part about it is that if you get a B in the course, it can then count towards, it will count towards reducing your Hope, your Hope number of courses, but it also gets you well on your way. So I think that's a good program, and we might look at how to make that work better for the state. That's all I have to add.
Thank you, Dr. Hecker. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions for our president of the independent colleges?
Yes.
Any audience questions for Dr. Hecker? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, members, that concludes our hearing. Hopefully we have been informed about these important issues and gained knowledge, and if we need to provide some solutions, perhaps we have the direction now to do so. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.